Last night, AEW delivered an absolute home run, a grand slam, knocked it out of the park. Fantastic show overall. Does that mean it was a perfect show? I don't know if there's such a thing as a perfect show. Many shows have come close, but in 2026 pro wrestling, I don't know if there's such a thing as a perfect show. Now, AEW did deliver 3 back-to-back-to-back match of the year contenders last night. But does that mean that this show was absolved from any sort of mistakes? I don't think so. We're going to dive into all of that and so much more right here on the Go Home Show. Don't go anywhere. Let's start here. If you tuned into AEW's Forbidden Door last night, what you saw was a great pro wrestling show. Overall, the show, Tony Khan smacked it out of the park. What else can you say? Now, there were some issues, right? Like, I think one issue that continues to plague Tony Khan and these AEW pay-per-views, it seems like there's a lot of unnecessary time added to these shows. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, we'll start here. The opening match, the Young Bucks match versus El Sky Team and Unbound Co. Despite the fact that it was a solid 3-way tag team match, it was entertaining. Despite that, this match went almost 30 minutes. I think a match with hardly any build going into the show, I think we could have trimmed that back a little bit, right? Then we got Kenny Omega versus Zack Sabre Jr. Again, technically solid match. I actually enjoyed the match a lot more than I thought I was going to, but it also went 30 minutes. I think we could have trimmed that down a little bit. Then we got Jon Moxley versus Bandito for the AEW Continental Championship. I thought that match, despite the fact that, it was a hard-hitting, solid affair, it was a damn decent match. Bandito he just consistently proves that he's the best luchador on the planet. I feel like that match should have been reserved for this week's Dynamite. I feel like that would have been fantastic. And the fact that we don't really see Bandito as often as we should on Dynamite, I think that would have been a great way to get him on the show and just let those guys go out there for 20 minutes in the main event. I think that would have been great. I don't think that needed to be on the show necessarily. Now, I understand those guys are in the same company, by the way. Now, I understand it's Forbidden Door and we need cross-promotional matches, right? I totally understand the concept, even though I'm not a fan of the concept on its own anymore. I think the concept it's kind of dead. It's dying. It needs to be either revamped or just completely redone. But Shota Umino versus Pac for the IWGP Global Championship, I wasn't even really aware that Andrade lost the belt to Shota Umino. Now, as I said, I understand it's Forbidden Door. You have to have cross-promotional matches, and I get that. But I don't think this needed to be on the show. We got no build for it, right? And I understand sometimes they do stuff on Collision. Like, I get it. But hardly anybody watches Collision. That's the thing. You can't just throw stuff on Collision, especially when we've gotten Dynamites that have kind of been lackluster. I would say over the last 4 weeks, we've had 2 or 3 of them, right? You can't just throw stuff on Collision and expect the audience to go research for themselves. No, you have to put it on your main show for the audience as a whole, right? Because I feel like what a lot of people don't understand, especially in the AEW realm, is not everybody's a sicko, bro. Not everybody's a sicko. The sickos, those are the ones who you're going to get views from regardless, and they're going to think it's great regardless. No, I'm talking about the other people, the audience that you're trying to bring into the product. A good way to do that is to put these backstories or to put these, builds to a match, especially going into a pay-per-view. The best way to do that is to put it on Dynamite. Dynamite's your main show. Dynamite's your bread and butter. So that was kind of my only complaint, is I felt like those two matches could have been cut out completely, and then we could have trimmed down the Omega Zack Sabre Jr. match as well as the opening match. And I feel like we could have gotten out at a decent time, right? Because for me, I'm on Central Time, so it started at 7 o'clock. Going all the way till midnight that's absurd. That's absurd. If you count the pre-show, this thing started at 6. I mean, dude, you can't consistently do that. And they do that all the time. I get it. We love pro wrestling. The sickos love pro wrestling. I love pro wrestling, especially when it's good pro wrestling. But when it's on till midnight, bro, and some of us got kids that are asleep, we can't review the show that night. I would love to have reviewed the show last night. I think that would have been great, and we probably would have done better numbers. But unfortunately, it went till midnight, and here I am talking about it now. So I think if we could clean some of that stuff up, I think these AEW pay-per-views would be even better. It would be dramatically better. And they're not bad now. That's the thing. They're great shows on their own now. If we could just clean some of the time stuff up, dude, forget about it. Forget about it. You'd bring in so many new fans. It's not even funny. But outside of that one complaint that I have about the time aspect of the show was fucking fantastic. Do I think there's any reason to sit here, on a YouTube channel and bitch about what we got overall? No, absolutely not. I thought it was a great show. Started off with the Young Bucks, who defeated the El Sky team and Unbound Co. This match was definitely solid, and the Young Bucks continuously prove why, despite the fact that they're getting up there a little bit in years, they are still one of the very best tag teams on planet Earth. I don't fucking at me. You can disagree all you want. All you got to do is watch these two guys work, man. All you got to do is watch them work. I understand they're not going to be everybody's cup of tea, right? And trust me, I understand that Zack Sabre Jr. is not my cup of tea, right? There's a lot of things that there's a few different guys in AEW that aren't my cup of tea. There's a lot of guys in WWE that aren't my cup of tea. They're current WWE champion, Sami Zayn. But that doesn't mean that you can't just say, hey, this was a good match. This guy's not my cup of tea, but this match was pretty damn good, right? And I feel like if we could all just come to conclusions that way in the pro wrestling realm, I think things would go a lot smoother and you'd have less bickering online. But I digress, man. The Young Bucks continuously prove why they're great. And I walked away from this match. I don't watch CMLL regularly, and I feel like most people would share that sentiment here in the United States. But I walked away from this match being very, very thoroughly impressed with Mascara Dorada. Like, the dude was great. And I absolutely, if you're looking for future luchadors to be the future of lucha, it's got to be that guy. That guy blew me away with some of the shit he did in that ring last night. Solid opening match. Then we got to Kenny Omega. He defeated Zack Sabre Jr. This match was far better than I was expecting, and that's mostly just because, obviously Kenny Omega is one of the greatest in-ring workers of all time. You can at me if you want. I don't really give a fuck. This is my show. You're going to get my opinion. Kenny Omega is one of the greatest in-ring performers of all time. Go watch Prime Kenny and then come back. I'm Zack Sabre Jr., as I said. He's not my cup of tea, bro. And that's okay. We like different things. Is there anything he does that irks me or that I think completely sucks? No. He's solid all around technically in the ring, and, he's just not my cup of tea, bro. But it surprised me because this was actually a pretty damn good match. This was great in-ring work, technically speaking, here from both guys. Zack Sabre surprised me. I didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I did. And of course, like I said, Kenny's an all-time great performer. So you can't really go wrong when you put Kenny Omega opposite somebody. But Zack Sabre Jr. actually held his own in there. And I was pleasantly surprised with that match. I do think it went 30 minutes is too long, bro. Like, we can all agree. 30 minutes for a match like that barely had any build, it's too long. Way too long. Then we got Jon Moxley, who defeated Bandito to retain the AEW Continental Championship. I love me a good hard-hitting match, where you just know both guys are going to fucking feel it the next day. And I have no doubt that Jon Moxley and Bandito are in some pain today, moving around. But Bandito, like I said, he's the best lucha on the planet right now. And it's not close. I think after what I saw, and if I look into him some more, Mascara Dorada could give him a run for his money maybe. But I'd have to watch more of him. But as far as I'm concerned, Bandito's probably the best lucha that I've seen so far on the planet. And, Moxley, when he shows up to work, when Moxley puts on his working boots and he's going against somebody that kind of gives him that teeter-totter effect where he gives it and then they give it back, right? If he's in there with somebody like that and Jon Moxley shows up to work, he can absolutely put on a pretty damn good match as long as he got the right dance partner. And I think in this case, Bandito was the right dance partner. I thought this was very good stuff. I don't think it needed to be on the show. Like I said, you can't give us everything on the pay-per-view, bro. You got to save some of it for Dynamite, because a lot of what happens on the shows, it's not just about you knocking it out of the park at the pay-per-view. Because with the 3 main events tonight, you would have done that regardless, right? You would have done that regardless. So I think stuff like this that are, solid B+, A- matches, you already gave us the A+ on the pay-per-view. Save the B+ and the A- for the weekly television. You want to take it to WWE? WWE, who's in a rough spot right now. WWE, who is royally pissing off wrestling fans who watch those shows. You want to stick it to them? This is how you do it. You got to follow it up. Wednesdays have to be good shows, not just the pay-per-views, right? And I think this would have been a great Dynamite main event. Or opening the show, either way. But solid match overall. Jon Moxley retains the Continental Championship. I don't know if I see him losing that belt till maybe All In, but even then, I don't know who he would go defend the belt against. I don't know if anybody's at that level yet. But we'll see. We'll see where they take it. Next up, we got Shota Umino. I have never watched Shota Umino work before. So this was my first experience watching Shota. He ended up defeating Pac to retain the IWGP Global Championship. I got to tell it like it is. I'm an honest reviewer. I'm an honest podcaster. I don't quite understand why this was on the show with no build, to be honest. That being said, I give credit where credit's due. What I do here is I tell the truth, right? So there was no build, guys. We could have used a lot more build shown on Dynamite specifically for this match. But that being said, it was a pretty decent match. By the end of it, I would say maybe the latter half of it, I started getting into it a lot more. Imagine if we had a story for this or some build over the last few weeks. I think it would have piqued our interest even more. But this was a solid match. There was a spot here where Pac powerbombed Shota over the top rope through the table. I don't think I've seen that since like Mike Awesome ECW days. That was crazy. I think One Night Stand 2006, if I remember correctly, would be the last time I've personally seen something like that. That looked it's always sketchy, man, when you do something like that, right? But I feel like it fit what these guys did. A spot like that, it fits Pac. I have always been a Pac fan since his days in NXT, where he was Adrian Neville. The guy's fantastic. The guy is built like a fucking Greek god, despite the fact that he's like 5'5", right? But the guy is jacked to the max. And he can do perfect 450s. It's fucking crazy. It's crazy. Pac is one of those talents to me that has always been underutilized in WWE and AEW now. I feel like the guy deserves more. And I feel like he would be a good candidate for an international title or a global championship or continental championship. Sorry. This match was for the global championship. But I've always thought Pac was underutilized, and Shoto impressed me, man. My first time watching him, I thought he did pretty good. And, Tanahashi coming out after the match and kind of putting the belt on him kind of solidifies that he's somebody that New Japan Pro Wrestling is getting behind. So that's cool to see. I don't watch New Japan. I used to watch New Japan back when you had AJ Styles and Finn Balor and the entirety of the Bullet Club. That's when I watched New Japan. I haven't really watched it lately. There's really nothing over there that draws my gaze, like the eyes of fucking Sauron, right? There's nothing really that draws my gaze over there. I'm more focused on what we got going on here with AEW and WWE. So, well, you guys let me know. If you guys watch New Japan, let me know what you think of Shoto. If what we saw last night is typically what we get from him. I was pretty impressed. Next up, we had Tekla against Starlight Kid for the AEW Women's Championship. It's not Tekla's best performance. I'm going to be honest there. Not Tekla's best performance. I've never really watched a Starlight Kid match. I've heard that she's fantastic. The match was okay. I thought as far as the match card on this show, it was the weakest, but it had some of the more intriguing story going into it, which was basically Tekla's entire beef with Stardom. I thought that was pretty interesting stuff, and the antics that Tekla committed after the match, I think, kind of elevated it a little bit. I think it needed that stuff to happen. She ripped Starlight Kid's mask off after beating her, and then she spit in the mask and she threw it all over the Stardom president or whatever he is. She smacked him with it a bunch of times. He completely oversold it, and it was really cartoony, and he just chat, the dude was laying against the railing, holding on to the railing like he was dead. But keep in mind, she hit him with a mask. So he completely oversold it, and it was kind of goofy, but the antics afterwards really kind of solidified, like, geez, Tekla she can be an asshole, which is what they were going for, right? So I love that part. The match was just okay for me, though. Next up, and by the way, with what we got later on in the show, I hope they just keep it simple, man, with this women's championship. And I hope they just give us Tekla and Mercedes, please. Just build that to All In and then give us the match. It really is that simple. If they do that, that's going to be a fucking banger at All In. And I hope they just, stay on that path. Then we got Cope and Christian taking on the Dogs for the AEW Tag Team Championships. Cope and Christian won this match, obviously, but the match itself or the participants in this match, that was not the biggest talking point at all. The biggest talking point surrounding this match, and quite honestly, one of the bigger talking points coming out of the show, Jay White made his return to AEW. I'm a big Jay White fan. Glad to see him back. I hope they, so it seems like they're putting him into some kind of short feud with the dogs, looks like. I hope they move him on from that fairly quickly because Jay White deserves way more than just being in a rando feud with the dogs, right? But this match was okay. It was just okay. The ending was great. Jay White comes out. He helps Cope and Christian retain the tag team championships. Obviously, I think Cope and Christian Cage are going to hold on to those belts until now. It's no secret that AEW is about to have a bunch of tag team talent coming into the company. Excuse me. They're about to have who I think is one of the best teams of the last 20 years in the Motor City Machine Guns. They're about to have the New Day. So honestly, if I'm AEW, and I think this is what they're going to do, you have Cope and Christian hold on to those belts and you wait for the influx of tag teams to come in, and then you start mingling everybody in with each other, right? You start having Cope and Christian face to face with Motor City Machine Guns. We get the Young Bucks and the New Day face off that we've wanted. You know, you have to have all these guys intermingle with each other, and I think that's what they're holding off for. So when it comes to AEW's tag team division, chat, by the time All In comes around, it's going to be fucking fantastic pro wrestling, and it's going to be fantastic tag team wrestling, which is something I have always been a fan of, and it's something that, unfortunately, the other side of the fence, WWE, has no interest in giving us. So I am jacked. I'm super excited for when those guys come on into AEW and we get some amazing tag team classics. Next up, and I am going to say this with my whole chest, chat. Next up, we got Mercedes Moné versus Maya World for the Owen Hart tournament finals. I'm just going to say this outright, and I don't give a fuck who disagrees with me. I don't really care. This was the best women's match of 2026 so far. Easily. You know, people can at me, people can hate me all they want. I don't give a shit. Mercedes Moné and Maya World put on one of the best women's matches in recent memory for sure. But this was best women's match of 2026. Not even close. Not even close. Maya World has really surprised me. And for those clowns, right? You know, I made a video a few weeks, maybe a month ago at this point, about how AEW can play their cards right and they can create a new superstar with Kevin Knight. And I still feel that way. I'm not a fan of him, you know, being thrusted into the Don Callis family. But I still feel like with Kevin Knight, AEW can create a new superstar. And I got tons of comments on there. I don't know if it was, you know, people who just hate on AEW or what it was. But there was a ton of comments on there saying AEW doesn't create new stars. I would love for them to prove that wrong here. Because you have a new star that was created organically in Maya World. And my fear is that they're just going to thrust her into the Ring of Honor system and have her beat Athena for that title. No. We need Maya World to be a feature commodity on AEW Dynamite. She needs to be on Dynamite week in and week out. You have a possible future star on your hands, and it happened organically just by her wrestling. And the crowd was massively behind her. And she even dealt with a wardrobe malfunction in that match, and it was still the best women's match of 2026. So you have a future star on your hands. You just need to follow it up correctly. And I'm begging Tony Khan, please follow this up. Because you can never have enough superstars, particularly in the women's division. And then I wouldn't even mind seeing them run it back after Mercedes inevitably wins the AEW Women's Championship. I wouldn't mind seeing them run it back with Maya World than possibly even taking it off of her. So you have a future star if you play the cards right. And I'm hoping Tony Khan does just that. Mercedes. She proves why she is one of the greatest women's professional wrestlers of all time. I have always gotten flack and gotten shit on for saying that. You know, WWE fans want to throw out Becky Lynch and how she's the best ever. That's just because Becky Lynch says that. Becky Lynch is one of the greatest of all time. So is Charlotte Flair. So is Rhea Ripley. I'm sorry, when it comes to in-ring performance, Sasha Banks, Mercedes Moné is better than all of them. Only one that maybe rival her is Charlotte or Rhea. But I have always put Sasha Banks in that category. Mercedes Moné in that category. She's one of the greatest women's wrestlers of all time. And it's not even close. And she just proved why. So I feel like Mercedes was the right winner, as I predicted. I got shit on for that prediction too. I thought that was one that we all saw coming, but I guess not, because I got shit on for that prediction. You know, I usually don't like taking victory laps, but I'm going to take one. I told you so. Great match. Best women's match of 2026. Mercedes versus Tekla at All In Wembley. Book it. That's what needs to happen. Tony Khan, don't let me down. Next up was the steel cage match. Team Briscoe versus Team MJF. And if Team Briscoe won, then Mark Briscoe would earn a shot at the AEW World Championship. Now the cage, it's not really a cage that I've ever seen before. Very unique. You know, it was just a complete spherical cage. It came down around the ring, more like a Hell in a Cell, where it encompasses the ring, but there's still room on the outside, right? And it actually appeared like there was actually more room in between the cage and the ring than there was in your typical like Hell in a Cell style cage, which I actually liked. I thought the cage looked cool. And if I'm being honest, this is the best cage match in recent memory that I've watched. You know, I'll be the first one to admit I was not overly excited about this match for the simple fact that they gave it away last Wednesday on Dynamite. They gave you a preview of this match. And I don't like that. I'm not a fan of doing that. You know, that's to me, that's the Vince McMahon special. Give away the match, then give it away again at the pay-per-view and then wonder why people weren't interested, right? I hate that. To me, it's lazy booking. But in this case, it worked. It made me completely forget that we saw the preview on Dynamite because this match was so fantastic, right? So entertaining. Not only was it gruesome in cage match format, like how it's supposed to be, but it was also a little cartoony and over the top at times, but in a good way. And, you know, I think all of these elements put together, and then you add the fact that, had Team Briscoe won, Mark Briscoe gets a title shot. You know, he's the last one to beat MJF at a pay-per-view, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. No, maybe that's not right, but he beat him at a pay-per-view regardless. So I think all of those elements put together for this cage match made it very entertaining. Best cage match I've seen in recent memory in pro wrestling, easily. Now there's a couple spots. I'm not usually a play-by-play guy, as you know, anyone who watches me could tell you. I'm not a play-by-play guy. I don't discuss this shit. Move for fucking move. You know, otherwise we'd be here 4 fucking hours talking about just this show alone. But, you know, I try to give you guys some enough descriptive detail so you get the gist of what happened and my feelings of the match after the match, right? For this match, I got to cover some spots. Like we saw thumbtacks, we saw fucking orange slices, right? I mean, there was a spot in there. So Kyle Fletcher was busted open with a Nintendo, by the way. So Kyle O'Reilly had a Nintendo in his backpack, and he had the controllers. You know, back then we had wired controllers. I know for you youngins, you're not going to understand what the fuck I'm talking about. But back then the controllers were only wired, bro, and there was long ass fucking cords. And the controller for the Nintendo was wrapped in barbed wire, and he was swinging it and smacking people with the controller that was wrapped in barbed wire. It made me chuckle. And then he put a cartridge, he took a cartridge, a game, and he blew into it and put it into the Nintendo, shut the Nintendo, and then he hit Kyle Fletcher over the head with it. It was fucking hilarious. And it busted Kyle Fletcher open. And then, so each of the conglomeration brought a bag down with them, right? So that was Kyle O'Reilly's bag. Orange Cassidy's bag literally had orange slices that were given to them by Willow. So they all took like a halftime break and they ate the orange slices. And then they took Kyle Fletcher and they were holding him down and they squeezed one of the orange slices into his gash on his forehead. I've never seen that. But you just, oh my God, that, you can feel it just watching it on television. You can feel the burn. That looked fucking brutal. Then we saw MJF slam Mark Briscoe into the, I don't think it was MJF, I think it was Kyle Fletcher, slam Mark Briscoe into the thumbtacks. And then we saw MJF slam Darby Allin into the thumbtacks. So Kyle Fletcher grabbed Mark Briscoe off the top, flipped him over onto his back onto the thumbtacks. The MJF, Darby, of course, you know, shocker, Darby Allin's a fucking lunatic. They were going to do a backdrop onto the thumbtacks, but Darby Allin added an extra rotation in there. So he actually landed on his stomach. And his fucking face, I swear to God, chat, his face hit the thumbtacks. This looked fucking brutal. Brutal. Don't know how the guy did that. And, you know, continued to wrestle afterwards. And then the biggest spot of the night, or actually I was almost going to skip over one. Roderick Strong had like a hockey style gear bag. And when they opened it, MJF had them open the bag. And Leo Rush pops out and he starts antagonizing Team MJF. And then they finally subdue him and put him back in the bag, zip it up, and they wrap a chain around it and stick it under the ring. I thought that was hilarious. And then there was another spot with Kevin Knight. This was the big one. So Darby Allin also brought out a backpack, but he left it on top of the cage. Of course, the lunatic can't just go through the door. He's got to scale the cage at the beginning to get into it. But he left a backpack at the top. Well, Kevin Knight was kind of like doing the cowardly heel thing. He was trying to escape Darby Allin. So he escapes up to the top. He sees the backpacks there. He's like, oh, I wonder what weapons in here that I can use. He grabs the backpack, goes to open it, and the thing fucking explodes in his fucking face. Like, I mean, it was a legit looking explosion. Like it was kind of loud, right? It sounded like a legit firework, and smoke surrounded Kevin. You couldn't even see him. And like sparks flew everywhere. And this thing exploded in his fucking face. He falls off the top of the cage. There's 4 tables, 2 stacks of 2 tables, right? Right next to each other. He falls through them. I don't know what these tables were made out of, but he only broke the top 2. The second layer of 2 tables that were set on the floor, they didn't even fucking budge. So he broke the top 2 and not the second layer. It looked fucking brutal. Looked absolutely brutal. And then at the end, of course, Andrade, MJF's doing the typical tell him what to do. And we've seen this spot, right? And this is another thing, you know, AEW, they do have subtle storytelling, which is something I look for. You know, something I wish WWE would give us more of, the subtlety, right? So if you notice the last few weeks, MJF has been having this moment with Andrade where he's like, pick the guy up. I'm going to hit him with the ring, right? And him and Andrade argue. And then Andrade ends up picking him up because Don Callis comes in and he's like, hey, think about the money. So then Andrade picks him up and lets MJF hit him. But tonight, they went to do the same thing, and that's not how it worked out. There was no Don Callis in the cage to tell Andrade, hey, you're going to do what you're told. Nope. He went to hit, I believe it was Mark Briscoe, yes, with the Dynamite ring. Andrade drops Briscoe, and he hits MJF with his fucking elbow. Looks fantastic every time Andrade does it. Then he takes off his shirt and reveals a different shirt that says, fuck MJF and fuck Don. Great spot. Great spot. Mark Briscoe ends up hitting a J Driller on, oh, geez, Louise, what's his name? It'll come back to me. Jake Doyle. Jeez Louise. He ended up hitting a J Driller on Jake Doyle. 1, 2, 3. That's all she wrote. And then it was later announced that Mark Briscoe will be getting a AEW World Title match this Wednesday on Dynamite. So hopefully that means that this Dynamite is still going to be a really good, entertaining show. Because honestly, chat, if we can just be honest for a second, that's one thing AEW does that I wish they would not do. They give you a banger pay-per-view and then they almost take like the next week off, the following Dynamite. No. You need to capitalize on the momentum. So the fact that we have a world title match on that show, I'm hoping that means that Tony Khan gets it and we get a banger Dynamite to follow the pay-per-view. That's how you really get people talking. Don't just give me a good pay-per-view, bro. Give me some good follow-up episodes of Dynamite. Team Briscoe won, and we'll see the consequences of that on Wednesday. And then came the main event. Was it overbooked to an extent? Sure. There were enough false finishes in here for an entire pay-per-view show on its own. I get that. But I'm sorry, there's no way you can watch this match knowing the history these two guys have. And then, a lot of these goobers will tell you AEW doesn't tell stories. I beg to differ. This Will Ospreay story, and I've said it all along, this Will Ospreay story has a chance to be the best pro wrestling story of 2026. It had a chance. It still has a chance. And I think adding Swerve into that story, adding that explosive element in there, only enhances this story. And I thought this was great stuff. The story that these two guys told in that ring last night, to steal a term from WWE, was absolute cinema. An actual cinema, chat, not that slop bloodline garbage that WWE keeps claiming is cinema. No. This was actually like watching a fucking movie. This was actually like a Rocky movie. Wrestling was beautiful in this match. It had an element of brutality, right? I don't know if you saw how much blood Swerve Strickland lost in this match, but it was getting to the point where I was concerned for the guy's health. I was like, holy shit. They looked like a fucking Saw movie outside of the ring. There was blood all over the steel steps. There was blood all over the announce. I'm talking puddles, chat. There was blood all over the announce table, blood all over the floor. At one point, it was dripping off Will Ospreay's shoes. It's fucking crazy. But it also had that element of brutality mixed with the skill and technical ability that let you know you're watching two of the very best pro wrestlers in the world today. And then you add in the element of former friends turned bitter enemies now meeting up in the Owen Hart final, which is the biggest tournament that the company has. And there's a lot on the line, man. Swerve got his moment. Was Will Ospreay going to get his finally in his home country at All In Wembley? That's what was on the line. After the double fusion neck surgery, after forcing to swallow his pride, after being forced to swallow his pride and actually work with the Death Riders who injured him in order to rebuild himself. That way, because he knew if he stayed the way he was, if Will Ospreay stayed the type of wrestler he was never going to get it done. He needed that more aggressive element. He needed that, a little bit of that I don't give a fuck attitude injected into his veins. He needed it. And all of these elements came together, and we got what, in my opinion, rivals the El Grande versus El Grande for match of the year. In fact, at some point this before the year is up, I'm going to have to rewatch both of these matches. I don't see anything topping these two. I don't want to just be recency bias. But if you wanted to tell me this was match of the year, I would not fucking argue with you. This was great. This was absolutely incredible. The storytelling, the little moments. You know, there was a moment there where Swerve's back in the ring. He's completely covered in blood. Ospreay's covered in blood, but it's dried. And they're just staring each other down. And you know we're having a reset. But at the same time, you knew that the finale was about to come. And then there was a moment in there where Swerve kicked Ospreay in the head, right? And Ospreay, his head turns, and then he's looking right at the Death Riders and Jon Moxley. And then he gets a second wind, he gets motivated, and then he finally is able to put Swerve Strickland away. Will Ospreay wins the Owen, as I also predicted, but I feel like that was one we all should have saw coming. But again, I get shit on for my predictions for some reason. But the two winners of the Owen Hart tournament were the right winners. Those are the two wrestlers who needed to win the tournaments. And I'm glad that Tony saw it that way. I'm glad that Tony pulled the trigger on the correct winners. And overall, this was a damn good show. You know, I think we certainly, as I said, could have shortened it by getting, you know, moving the Moxley Bandito match to Dynamite, trimming the Omega Sabre Jr. match, trimming the opening three-way tag team match, a pay-per-view going from, 6 p.m. to midnight. Guys, I feel like people should agree with me on that. It's ridiculous. It's a bit ridiculous. But that being said, the three main events were back-to-back-to-back match of the year contenders. Absolutely. 1,000%. And anytime you have three match of the year contenders on the same show, it's a great night of pro wrestling. Great night of pro wrestling. My only hope, my only wish moving forward, aside from the time stuff, I feel like I've harped on that enough. I hope Tony follows this up. I hope Tony follows this up on Wednesday and the Wednesdays moving forward. I really hope Tony can produce intriguing, really captivating episodes of Dynamite, because that's how you get people talking about your product. That's how you get new audiences to not just go back and watch a pay-per-view maybe, but that's how you get them to tune in week after week. You can't just phone it in the next episode after the fantastic pay-per-view. That's not how it works. You got to keep following it up, right? You're only as good as your next at bat, bro. So you can hit the pay-per-view. You can hit a home run. You can knock that bitch out of the park. And that's what they did. Just hitting a home run at the pay-per-view. It's not just about that. Right? It's also about what you do during your next at bat. And I'm not asking for a home run at your next at bat. You just hit a home run at the pay-per-view. But I don't think it's too much to ask for a single. Maybe a double every now and then, right? If Tony Khan can do that, man, it's going to be tough. If we keep getting pay-per-views like this and we get episodes of Dynamite that are consistently good, right? And get us excited about the home run pay-per-views. And we get singles and doubles for Dynamite. Maybe a triple every once in a blue moon. It's going to be hard to consume this on Wednesdays and then jump right back into, E-fed slop on Monday and Friday. So I'm hoping Tony Khan does it. I'm hoping Tony Khan just goes the simple route, right? And at All In, we get MJF and Will Ospreay. Needs to fucking be the match at Wembley. And we get Tekla and Mercedes at Wembley. Those need to be the championship matches, bro. Please. Let's just keep it simple and let's get this thing done. Let's get this thing done. Let's let Will finish his story against the biggest villain in pro wrestling. And that's pretty much it. If you missed the show, I would recommend checking it out. That's usually how I gauge a show, is if somebody didn't watch it and asked me, hey, Sai, do you think I should go back and check that out? That's how I gauge if it was a good show or not. And my answer to this show is yes, absolutely. I think if anything, you need to go back and watch those 3 main events. They were fucking fantastic. Well, let me know what you guys thought of Forbidden Door. Let me know if you thought, I oversold it to you. Right? I don't think I did. But don't forget to like this video. Subscribe to the channel, guys. We just hit 134 subscribers. There's nowhere to go but up, man. I am being 100% serious. We are not here on the Go Home Show on this channel. We're not here to just take part. We're here to take over. We're going to be taking over the IWC. So like this video, support the channel. I genuinely appreciate every single one of you. Comment down below. Comment your thoughts. Any questions, let me know. And I will get back to you. I will be posting an NXT Great American Bash review. So if you're interested in that, check that out. Otherwise, I'll be reviewing Monday Night Raw. Let's get it.